Hello and welcome to part 6 of this tutorial series about how to make a Japanese dojo in Blender. In this last video, I'm going to show you how to add the top windows and make parchments with text. Without further ado, let's open the previous project and start from where we left. Enable the Door 1 collection. Duplicate this door and move it to the Scene collection. Then hide the collection. Enter Edit mode and delete all the vertices. Switch to Vertex Select mode. Add a plane mesh. Move it up and rotate along the x-axis. Scale it until it has this shape. Move it up. Then move it to the wall here. In Edit mode, scale it so that it fits inside the frame. Let's add 4 loop cuts with Ctrl R. Use the mouse scroll wheel to increase the number of cuts. Add 4 more loop cuts here. Now we can edit the border radius in the Modifiers tab on the right. Set it to 0.03 meters. Then duplicate the window. Also duplicate this wooden column and place it at the center of the frame. Duplicate all the window pieces and move them to the right. Also duplicate them to the left. Now duplicate this window and place it on the left side of the dojo. Like that. Copy and move the window to the left. Duplicate again and place it at the center, then move it slightly off the x-axis. Duplicate all the windows and move them to the left to fill the gap. Delete the leftmost one. Copy all the windows and move them inside the other frames. Select this window and rotate it 90 degrees. Duplicate it to the right. Then slightly move it along the x-axis. Also this window. Then copy these 2 windows, so we can close the gap on the right. Now duplicate the windows to fill the rest of the frame gaps. Like so. Switch to rendered mode. Now we are going to let the light pass through the windows. Let me show you the reference render. As you can see, light goes through some windows so that it reaches the floor. To do so, let's open a Geometry Nodes editor area on the left. Add a switch node and set it to Material. Set the first material to Paper. Add a new material and name it Glass. Set it as the second material in the switch node. Add a group input node and connect the switch input to a new socket. Press N to open the Properties panel on the right and name the switch input to glass. Switch to Shader Editor. Now add a Mix Shader node. Add an Emission node and connect it to the Mix Shader. This way we are telling some windows to be transparent so that outside lights can pass through them. Select this window and in the Modifiers tab, enable the glass checkbox. Let's add a material slot and select the glass material. Enable Thin Wall. Then add a Light Path node and connect is Camera Ray to the factor of the Mix Shader. Also set the weight of the transmission to 1, this way we get a transparent glass. Set the roughness to 0. You can now check the difference. Enabling glass will allow light to pass through. Select this window too and enable glass. Now we want to make the area light more directional. To do so, select the light and in the light properties decrease the spread value of the beam shape, like so. Enable glass for this window. And also for this one. Slightly rotate the light around the Z-axis. Select all the window objects. Then move them to a new collection which we are going to call Windows. Alright, now, let's add a cylinder. In edit mode, rotate and scale it. Scale it along the Z and Y axes by pressing S and then Shift X. Right-click on the object and click on Shade Auto Smooth. Then in the Materials tab, assign the wood material. Actually assign the wood floor material. This way we get the wood texture aligned for this wooden piece. This is going to be a piece of the parchment. Let's change the viewport display color of the wood to brown. Alright, now let's add a plane object. In edit mode, move it up and rotate. Like that. This is going to be the paper piece of the parchment. I forgot to enable the screencast keys. Let me enable them back so you can see the keys I'm pressing on the bottom left of the screen. Let me hide all this stuff so we can better concentrate on the parchments. Select all the vertices of the paper piece. Enter X-ray mode and select these vertices. Now extrude them using E. Extrude them following the circle shape of the wooden piece. Duplicate the wooden piece. And keep extruding the paper piece like we did before. Right-click the paper and click Shade Auto Smooth. Change the angle value until everything looks rightly smoothed. Switch to the Materials tab and assign the paper material. Now select the wooden piece and duplicate it. In edit mode, scale it down. Scale it up along the x-axis and rotate it, place it there. Duplicate it to the other side. Duplicate this wooden piece, scale it down and rotate. This will be the nail that supports the parchment. Enable back all the collections. Select the parchment pieces and move them to the vertical wooden columns. Move it against the column, like that. Duplicate it and move to the left side. Select the light and slightly rotate along the y-axis. See? Now it's pointing more down, illuminating the parchments. Enter Material Preview, switch to Edit Mode. Select this face and press U for UV mapping it to projection from view. This way we are mapping the selected face into 2D space, like we are viewing it, so switch to UV Editor. Click this number to make a copy of the material. This way, the material is no longer linked to the same paper material assigned to other objects. We can now add a Japanese written text to the parchments. To do so, you first need to have 2 Japanese text images. Drag and drop it into the shader editor. Duplicate the mix color node and set the second color to black. Now connect the texture we previously added to the factor of the mix node. As you can see, the result is inverted, so we add a map range node to make the text black and the rest of the paper white. In edit mode in the UV editor, scale the selected face up so that the text scales down a bit. Notice the text is repeating itself? That's because we have to set the extension of the texture from repeat to extend. Rename the material to paper with text. Select the left parchment and assign the paper with text material. Click the number in the slot to create a copy of the material. Select another image texture so that this parchment gets a different text. Let's also fix the UV mapping by pressing U in edit mode and project from view. Scale it up in the UV editor. Select this parchment's paper and press U to project from view again. Now it looks better. Alright, now we can finally proceed with rendering the scene. To do so, switch to the render workspace on top and render image. But as you can see, it's taking a long time. That's because the default number of samples is pretty high. And in the render settings, set the max samples value to something like 500. Then render again. I'm using a GPU for rendering, so it's faster than using the CPU. In the color management section, you can set the exposure value of the render. Let me increase it a bit so the scene looks brighter. Another thing you might want is to add some damage to the wooden columns, like in the reference render. So let's switch back to the layout workspace and start selecting all the wooden columns. For more realism, we are adding a beveling effect to all these objects. So add a bevel modifier and change the amount to 0.01 meters. With all the columns selected, press Ctrl L and then copy modifiers to copy the modifiers of the active object to all the selected objects. Switch to rendering workspace and render image. We can barely see the bevel, but that's only because the resolution of our render is 1080p. So let's make a 4K render by using these settings. Also, let me increase the samples to 1000. Render the scene again. Now I'm gonna add a damage effect. For that, I'll add my own node setup. I'll leave the download link in the description. So after appending the damage node group, having this column selected, I'm adding a geometry nodes modifier and select damage from the list. Let me change some parameters like the voxel size, erosion, and bump settings. The damage adds realism to our column because nothing in real life is perfect. Now select all the columns you want to damage. And lastly, select this column, which is the one we previously damaged. Ctrl L to copy the modifiers to the selected objects. And here we go. Let's render the scene. Alright, as you can see, the columns look much more realistic now. For volumetrics, let's add a cube and scale it up. It has to be bigger than our dojo. In the object properties under viewport display, display the object as wire. This way we avoid seeing the faces. Open a shader editor area on the left. Add a volume scatter node. Switch the phase function to me scattering, then decrease the density. See? We added a volumetric effect to the scene. Let's decrease the density slightly more and render the scene. The volumetric adds depth to the whole scene. Let me edit the exposure a bit. Like so. It very much looks like the reference render, although I added some volumetric smoke here and here, and did a bit of compositing like vignette and camera grain. But overall, that's quite it. If you got this far with the tutorial series, thank you for following me through to the end. It has been fun making this series, and I hope you find it helpful and learned something new. That's it. Thank you, and have fun. Bye.